All right, folks, welcome. Everyone Loves Pirates here, and here's your Dwarf Fortress update for August 2018. As always, this is just a quick update. I am not involved with Dwarf Fortress development in any way. I'm not even active on the forums. I just really love the game, and I love to stay up to date on what's going on with it. And some people like to do the same, but don't have the time or desire to go read the website. So I do recommend, as always, that you do actually go read exactly what's written at bay12s.com/dwarves, and links to everything will be in the description as always. But this is just my own kind of personal take on how I interpret what Tarn has written for his updates. So let's get started. On the 11th, and this is going to be a really quick one because there's only two actual updates. So on the 11th, he's talking about how World Gen villain stuff is just chugging along. They now use an identity system, the villains do, to give themselves mysterious aliases if they feel so inclined, though most of them don't. And then he lists a few examples of which I'll just quote him directly. So he says, "In my last world, a human high priest who valued cunning and decided to hatch a villainous scheme was also taken by a flight of fancy and called himself Kashi the Secretive. His name was not Kashi, but he wasn't creative enough to go outside his own language either, so the human language name itself is a first clue. Kashi means subtle." I found that fairly amusing. He also says a human necromancer called herself the Urn of Phantoms. That one is also sort of a giveaway, at least narrowing it down to a necromancer or a vampire, but they're all a bit on the nose right now. Moreover, that necromancer was motivated purely by her zany sense of humor, which was somehow survived the transition to ageless and evil immortality. He also said the vampire general, on the other hand, decided upon an alias out of a need for extravagance and privacy, on top of feelings of distrust, choosing to go by the sense of starvation, which seems fitting enough. The other vampire I saw was a scratch proliferating, which I guess also works. And lastly, for this, for the 11th update, he says the world also had a dwarven mayor going by Bandmist the Evil, unusually obsessed with intrigue. You never know when these tacky schemers will strike, but you'll come to fear their very scary names. So it's a pretty cool little insight into how the identity system is working. If they do want to give themselves an alias, what type of aliases do they choose, and what's motivating them to even choose an alias? And those examples, to me, were very entertaining, and I very much enjoyed reading about them. Now scroll up to the 18th, which is the only other real update for the month. He has updates about, essentially why he hasn't had updates having to do with the weather and stuff. But when it comes to actual Dwarf Fortress meat and ideas, this is all we got. So on the 18th, he's talking, mostly the post is about networks. And when working on their kind of interconnected intrigue data structures, they realized that without more detail during World Gen, the starting situations were feeling too similar outside of the player's immediate play area. So he has some examples, so I'll just quote him directly. He says, "For instance, there are no friendships in World Generation, among other things. So villain friendship exploits, which will be used on your fort, aren't available either. In order to make the networks which exist when World Gen ends rich and diverse, we have to bring a bit of parity in. So that'll be the next push. Nothing too drastic, but some interpersonal drama and some new positions, stuff that forms links." He also says, "For humans especially, the villains in criminal organizations would often be faced with a single town leader as the entire quote-unquote organization they were targeting, in a city with thousands and dozens of interconnected historical figures, which is not just silly, but fundamentally at odds with what they need to pull this off." He also mentions a lot on the table, even touches of crime, religion, and industry. We're definitely not jumping into the realm of the future property slash status slash law push, but there are some easy power structure linkages and flavor which should be compatible with future editions without consuming time we don't have. And lastly, he states it's unclear what will be new to Fort Mode. Friendship obviously isn't new for Fort Mode once it's fixed anyways, But for example, romantic rejection and jealousy are quick to do villain ready vectors, and that would work out in the fort in a straightforward fashion. That being said, since only some of these will be done, it's important not to dump an idea list here. I will report back with implemented specifics from the grab bag next log. This will be fun. So again, just a nice little look into what they're working on when it comes to the networks, and essentially needing to make sure that it happens during World Gen as well, not just the networks that are formed, while you're playing your fortress, but to help with this entire emergent narrative, story, relationship kind of driven processes that make Dwarf Fortress, I think, just the amazing in a way that we love it because there's nothing else out there like that. So it'll be interesting to see how detailed it gets, and how these interactions, these relationships that are formed or will be formed eventually in World Gen will play out. And maybe when you start a fortress, even though I know like the original 7 dwarfs that you start with are created out of the ether, you may start to see, especially with dwarves that are coming to your fortress, pre-existing relationships and intrigue options that you can literally just go into Legends mode and like read all up on and get the entire backstory. Again, probably not going to be super detailed during World Gen, because as it is, World Gen can already tax your machine quite heavily once you get past, depending on the size of your world and stuff, but once you get past like year 250. But anyways, I'm really excited for what this means for the game. I'm really looking forward to the update when it does come out. Now, as always, you can read all this yourself. He also has the future of the fortress posts in the forum. And if you don't know what that is, essentially people can just ask any question they want about Dwarf Fortress development, what's planned for the future in the specific thread. And then once a month he goes through and answers them all in quite a lot of detail. It's amazing. I've never seen any other dev do it. And I have started trying to cover those. It's a lot of information to go through, so it requires quite a bit of editing for me, but I am going to release a Future of the Fortress summary for August as well, and we'll see how it goes. I'll probably split it into 2 parts because last time it ended up being quite long. It was an hour. And then lastly, he also mentions he did an interview with Cake Bites, and there's a link to that. I actually listened to that already, and it was interesting. It was entertaining as always. I love hearing him talk about Dwarf Fortress and really anything. But he does go into quite a lot of his influences, how he got started programming like as a kid, just that kind of biographical background that some people find interesting, myself being one of them. And of course, he talks a lot about Dwarf Fortress, but a lot of that sort of stuff is going to be things that a lot of us already know because we follow stuff like the development and we've been playing for a long time. And the interviewer was familiar with Dwarf Fortress, which was always a nice touch, but she probably isn't as familiar with it as we are, which there's no problem with that, but it's just there's a lot more of your kind of simple answers or answers of things that, we just kind of inherently know. All right. Well, thank you guys. That was a pretty quick one, under 10 minutes. Let me know what you think, if you had any sort of insights onto what the updates we're talking about, and if you're excited about anything particular. You can do that in the comments. You can come join us on Discord where we can talk about Dwarf Fortress, and look forward to the future of the Fortress summary. So thanks for watching. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.